Hello, my name is Michelle and welcome to my channel, Michelle's Melancholia. Today, let's talk about all the books I read during the Christmas Evil Readathon. I read a total of 8 books. Of course, my intention was to use a different book for each of the prompts, but I had to double up on some of them because December is a busy month. As in all my previous wrap-ups, I will list the books in order from the one I liked the least to the one I liked the most. But because I've been talking about all these books a lot on my channel lately, I'm only going to go into more detail in the ones I've read during the last week of the readathon. So the book I liked the least was The Christmas Killer by Alex Pine, and I used this book for 2 prompts, for the Sleigh Bells prompt and the Winter Wonderland prompt. And this book was just pretty disappointing. I was promised 12 days of Christmas and 12 murders, and I barely got any murdering in the book, and the detective was just bad at his job. The next book was The Haunted by Bentley. I read this one for the prompt A Christmas Carol, and this one was not much better. It's a haunted house story, but honestly it just read like it was written by an AI. There was no originality in the story and I just didn't see the point. Is that too harsh? Is that true? Then we have The Ghost of Helen Addison by Charles McGarry, which I read for the Black Christmas prompt. This is also a murder mystery, but here we have this man who has psychic abilities, can communicate with the ghost of the murdered girl, and he's kind of helping to solve the mystery. And the mystery part of the story was well done. Obviously, I loved the setting in the Scottish Highlands, but the main character, psychic guy, was just unbearable to read about. He spent a lot of time just whining about why people, especially women, don't like him, while being absolutely rude and entitled to them. And I usually don't mind unlikable main characters, but there has to be some self-awareness there. However, I would still consider continuing with the series, so I can say it was completely terrible. Then we have one of the books I read more recently, and that is City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, and I used this one for 2 prompts. Of course, I used it for Santa's Little Helper because it's a middle grade book, but I also used it for the gifted book. And sorry, I forgot to say, but all 3 previous books I gave 2 stars, and City of Ghosts I gave 3 stars. And as I've said before, for me, 3 stars is good. 3 stars, I really like the book. So City of Ghosts is about a girl in her, I guess she's like a young teenager, and she had a near-death experience. And from this incident, she acquired the ability to cross the veil and see ghosts, sometimes interact with them. And she thinks she's the only one who has this ability until she visits Edinburgh, which is one of the most haunted cities in the world. And over there she meets another girl who also has this ability, and as she starts to understand what it truly means to be able to interact with ghosts, she meets one ghost who is dangerous, and she and some of her new friends go on some sort of adventure trying to face this dangerous ghost. And truly the only reason I gave these 3 stars and not higher is because I'm just not a super fan of middle grade books, but this was a really sweet story. The main character was really good. She is a smart and brave girl, which we love to see, and there are tons of cute little details in the story. Her parents have some kind of like paranormal investigation TV show. They are also writers. She has a cat, which I also love. Obviously, the setting in Edinburgh, the way they describe each of the places, the weather, the people on the streets, it was very accurate. So I would say if you're someone who enjoys reading middle grade horror, this truly is a great one. If I had to nitpick and choose one thing that kind of bothered me a little bit, is that the main character is a huge Harry Potter fan, so there is a lot of Harry Potter talk in the book, and I personally am over Harry Potter, so it just felt a bit unnecessary. But that's really nitpicking. The next book was Return of the Living Elves by Brian Asman. I read this for the Krampus prompt and I gave this one 3.5 stars. And this was great for pulling me out of the slump that I was in after reading some of the worst books. And this is just a very, very creative horror comedy in which a magical government organization has created zombified elves that are trying to take over the earth. It's very silly, but very entertaining. I think I laughed in every page of the book, and it has a good dose of gore as well. Now moving on to 4-star territory, the next book was our group read, Autumn Bleeds into Winter by Jeff Strand. And this is about a boy whose best friend gets kidnapped, never to be seen again, and he knows who did it because he saw. But there is no way to prove it, so he decides to take the matter into his own hands and finally get some proof to get that man in jail. And it's just a very tense story, but I found it extremely engaging and well written, and it just kept me turning page after page. The next 4-star read was The Test by Sylvain Nouvel, and this was my mood read. And why was I in the mood for this? Well, because I had it in my radar, but I was going through a complicated visa application. So as soon as I sorted out my immigration status, I wanted to read about other people going through the hell of sorting out their immigration status. So this is about a man that goes to an immigration center to take a citizenship test for him and his family, but then something unexpected happens during this test and it ends up being much more stressful than he could have ever anticipated. This is a very short book, so I can't really go into much detail without spoiling anything. I'll just say it's maybe a bit more science fiction than horror, and it has been compared to a Black Mirror episode, which is completely accurate. And in my opinion, for such a short book, it was not only super engaging, but also touched on some very interesting discussions about morality and human nature, and also, of course, the state of immigration policies in various places of the world. And finally, the last book I haven't talked about before, I think, is Let the Right One In by John Ajvide Lindqvist. I read this for the Reindeer Ride prompt, and it was a 5-star read for me. I loved this book. And I love the original movie as well. By original, I mean the Swedish one, not the American remake. Actually, I don't know if I love the American remake because I haven't watched it in ages, but right now I'm talking about the Swedish one. And the book is very, very similar to the movie, but of course it just adds so much more detail. The characters have so much more depth and the storylines are just more detailed, which made the whole book just come together so nicely. There is only one storyline that is in the book that is not in the movie, and all the time while I was reading it, I was asking myself, where is this storyline going? I'm not sure what it is contributing, but then when the ending rolled around, I was shocked. I think it is one of the most shocking parts of the story, and while I can completely understand why it was not put into the movie, because I guess it just sounds like something really complicated to film, I don't know, but it just made the story so much better, so much more disturbing. And I also loved the writing style. And it kept doing this thing I really like. I don't know how to describe it, so I'll give you an example. A chapter will start and we'll get a couple of paragraphs just talking about a bridge in the city where this happens. And The author will tell you a little bit about the story of that bridge, about when it was built, things like that, and then you will have something happen in the bridge, something that actually directly relates to the story. And the reason I love this is because it really made the setting part of the story almost as if it was a character itself. And there's just something so creepy about this place. This is a very small town where people just live their normal lives, where nothing interesting ever happens, and then suddenly one day something so unimaginable, something so horrible happens there, and it just leaves a huge mark on that town forever. And actually, you know what? It kind of reminds me of Michael McDowell's style. We also follow a bunch of different characters. They all kind of interact with each other at different points, but each of them also has their own storyline. And towards the end, you just see all of them coming together to offer different perspectives on this one horrific event. I don't know, I loved it. I loved everything about it. It's very much my style of book, a bit of a slow burn with a lot of detail, and just so immersive. I am obsessed and I want to read more of this author. And that is all. I was so happy to end the readathon with a 5-star read. Thank you to everyone who participated in the readathon, and thank you to all my co-hosts, Crystal, Kelsey, and Katrina, and of course Kelly for organizing this whole thing. I had so much fun and I can't wait for Christmas Evil in July. Let me know what you think of any of the books I read for the readathon, and tell me which book was your favorite in the month of December, and I will see you on my next video. But until then, goodbye.